Okay, we are live. You're very welcome, everyone. I'm Ciaran, Brennan, CEO, co-founder of LiveCosts, and delighted to bring you along what is a different sort of approach to our generic webinars. This time we're joined by Lizzy Baxter of Initial Electrical. So first of all, I'll just do a quick intro. Lizzy, first of all, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Ciaran. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. So I think we'll just kick off just to give people a bit of context. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm CEO, co-founder of LiveCosts. Where we're going to talk about today is generally when we do these webinars, it would be driven by subject matter, i.e., people have come to us with a problem about, generating some sort of reporting or tracking costs in a project or an integration to an accounting software, and we discuss the problem and we just deliver a webinar based on that. This week, or this month, should I say, we wanted to do something slightly different where rather than us talking about problems, it was just sort of bring someone on in a real life example that sort of lived the problem. So Lizzy, thankfully, has decided to go and do it. And I'd like to kick off, Lizzy. Would you first of all just give us a little introduction to yourself, a little bit about your background, and a little bit about Initial Electrical as well, if you wouldn't mind, please?
Yeah, of course, Ciaran. So hi, I'm Lizzy Baxter from Initial Electrical Limited. We are a commercial electrical contractors based in Huddersfield, and we cover the whole of the UK, servicing from initial electrical design right through to delivery in the retail sector, electrical design, build, right through to partial project completion. I've worked for Initial Electrical for just over 2 years, and I look after, I'm the head of operations. I look after the operational office, finance, and field operations too.
Excellent, appreciate it. When it comes to, let's say, LiveCosts, and I am going to be sort of jumping in and out of LiveCosts, and we'll talk about different areas, different problems, and I'll share my screen when appropriate. But I suppose when it comes to LiveCosts, how long have you been using LiveCosts, and I suppose what motivated you to start using LiveCosts in the first place?
So we started looking for a solution at the back end of March, and we have started using LiveCosts, implemented it and rolled it out to the business from the beginning of April. We were trying to sort of resolve 2 challenges we had in the business, one of which was real-time project cost tracking. At the time, we were struggling to sort of batten down what things were costing as a business and to do a snapshot. And the other thing I was looking for was to try and bridge a gap between our operational teams and the office teams, which is slightly different. But when I came across LiveCosts, I realised that that would actually help deliver a potential solution for both of those things. So that's why we started with that and couldn't wait to get going with it.
Excellent, appreciate that. Just as a bit of housekeeping as well, there is a Q&A chat. So as I'm working through this webinar, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in and we'll answer them as we're going through. So you've identified a problem. Your problem being you guys are not getting a handle on real-time costs. That's familiar to us. I suppose what were the primary challenges you faced then, when adopting LiveCosts?
So I think from the primary challenges we had from a cost perspective, tracking costs is very, very difficult to start with. Trying to work out what things are costing, the actual cost to the job at a snapshot or a moment in time is very, very difficult. You guys are going out on site and requesting materials to do a job. Sometimes things don't get delivered when you're expecting them to come, and you then get invoiced for materials that guys have then had to go and source separately. At that point, there's a bit of a disconnect between the field and the office. The office are not aware of materials that haven't been returned, for example, so we're not looking for credit notes. It's very, very difficult at a point in time to work out how much a job has cost.
Yeah, so probably I might just dive in there as well. So for anyone that's not familiar then with LiveCosts, I suppose what Lizzy's sort of jumping into there is the ability to sort of take an estimate. And a lot of times when people come to LiveCosts, they have 2 systems in place generally. They can quote, right? They're very capable of getting a quote out or an estimate out. And generally speaking, they have something on the account side, which that could be a Sage, a Xero, or a QuickBooks. And those 2 systems are generally in place. And the best way I can describe this is that the quality estimate is like the future tense. It's like us saying, this is what we think is going to happen on the project, or this is what we expect to happen on the project, or this is what we need to happen on the project in order for us to ensure that we're making money. That's your quote, that's your estimate. The account system a lot of the time, which is what a lot of people tend to go to in terms of managing performance, financial performance on a project. But the reality of the situation is that whether it be Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, whatever it might be, what we don't understand at the time is that they've never been designed to manage project costs, right? So then what we end up doing is holding post-mortem. What we're doing is we're creating the estimate. We're then getting into a real life environment where the project is live. We've nothing in place for managing that, which is actually the most important, critical part of managing the process. And what we do is we wait until it's all said and done to get into Xero or QuickBooks or Sage to actually see what happened. And that's a post-mortem, right? The damage is done. So what I'm reading from that, Lizzy, is that you guys were sort of looking at that. What happens then in terms of how the process will work is we just use very simple colors to sort of manage that. So what we would do is we plug the project straight into LiveCosts. I'll just set up an example here before we jumped on. The project will have a name. It'll be linked up to location. So if material orders and subcontract orders and tracking people's time, all that type of stuff is located. And then they get the ability to sort of break the project down into however you wish to do that. You can go into another sub-level there if you wish to, set budgets against whatever you wish to. And what we can do is we can mirror what the quote or the estimate says we expect to happen into the real life environment. And what LiveCosts essentially will do is just basically collect data against that. And then we can plug that straight in to that account system. When it comes to, I suppose, features and usability, or what I'm sort of digging into here, Lizzy, like what features of LiveCosts do you find then to be most beneficial for your business?
Well, there's too many to talk about in an hour, Ciaran, to be fair. I think we use pretty much all the features that are available, but one of the key things for us is the ability to raise purchase orders through the system really quickly. You can email in quotations that you receive from your suppliers into LiveCosts and convert those into purchase orders. You can assign them to the jobs, and then they're automatically emailed to the key suppliers, your subcontractors, whoever you need, from LiveCosts, so you don't need to do that separately. Once that's happened, we are then using the delivery functionality that you've got within there. So if we order some materials from a supplier and we order 10 items, we have the ability to track that our guys on site have actually received 10 items. Have they got 10? Have they got 5? Which is a key if the suppliers haven't got what we need at any one time. And then we then follow that through at the back of that, where we update the deliveries with what we have received versus what we haven't. And then when invoices are coming in from suppliers, they're automatically emailed into the inbox, can be converted, and then it matches it up to the purchase order. But the key for us is where it flags up and makes you aware that that invoice relating to that purchase order you haven't had all the materials that were on that invoice. So are you being charged for something that you haven't had and that you have to source from an alternative supplier? Which helps us with bridging the gap between us and the field. That was a key for us. We needed to make sure that we were engaging with our electricians in the field. Have you got what you need? Did you get everything? Can you make us aware and tie it all up? And then as a result of that, we are not being invoiced for materials we've had to buy again because they never received. It's also helped us chasing credit notes. So that particular piece of functionality is great on its own. Another one which and again, it's bite-sized chunks with this software. So I would suggest do not try and take every bit of functionality in one go, because it's a lot, it does a lot. But the catalogue is a great key. So this was something we had, or I had no concept of before LiveCosts. We have uploaded our catalogues with our personal pricing from our suppliers into the system. And when we receive invoices from our suppliers, LiveCosts is really clever and intuitive, and it actually notifies you whether you have paid more on that particular invoice than your agreed price, less, or it is the same of a previous invoice. And that is really key for us managing and keeping on top of costs when we're pricing jobs based on what we believe to be our catalogue price.
Have you found that particular area, like have you identified like times where you have been overcharged?
Yes, we have found times where we have been quoted prices and different to what we have been charged. Now, that it does, what we have found is that it depends on which suppliers you use and how they are structured themselves and where you're sourcing materials from. So sometimes it's not quite straightforward, but yeah, we have found that the arrow and the colour coding system does notify you.
So for those in the webinar that don't know the particular feature, haven't seen LiveCosts yet, so as a bit of background, there's always a story to everything, and one thing we like to do is tell the story of LiveCosts, because we are from industry, right? We've run our own companies, we understand the problems, and one of the problems that we had when we designed LiveCosts was we wanted to get a handle on when we're being overcharged by suppliers. And essentially how that happens is that, you know, we had our own experience of being basically charged different prices at different ends of the same trade counter in the same location. No matter about the same supplier with different locations charging us different rates, that can happen, but the same location, different ends of the trade counter. And what we found was the suppliers don't really, it's not as if it's a malicious thing where they're trying to get us. We didn't find that, but we just found that they just don't have the sophistication in their own systems to not be able to overcharge, and therefore the safety net that we want to put in place relied on us as a company to be able to just have to spot check. And the reality is we're not going to be able to spot check everything, right? There's going to be stuff that's going to get through. So how do we ensure then that every invoice that's coming into your company, that you're not being overcharged? And what we decided to do was, as Lizzy's describing there, is we built a catalog, and the catalog allows you to create a database of your materials essentially. So you can upload that via a spreadsheet, and then we can maintain it by updating the spreadsheet as price increases come in, or we can collect the data off the invoice, which is another feature in there as well. And essentially what happens is once an invoice lands in, we just have a way of reconciling the invoice, so that we just read the product code, we read the description, we read the price, and essentially can tell you then if you've been overcharged on that particular item as well. And then we can also run reports on that as well. So we can actually just run a report to see how the fluctuation looks, spin up graphs, all that type of stuff. Can you walk us through then, let's say it's like a typical day for you in LiveCosts, like how do you and your team sort of utilize LiveCosts?
So it depends which role and who's doing what, but I suppose a typical day from a finance perspective, we would start by looking in the inbox to understand the inbox within LiveCosts, to understand what documents are in there. So we would, throughout the day, the previous day, be forwarding in quotations from suppliers, we would be forwarding in invoices from suppliers, or we may also be tracking employees, so directly employed with the business, the actual timesheets within there. But we would go through the inbox like Ciaran's showing you there, and we would look at the invoices in particular. And this is really clever because the system does most of the work for you. So the system will look through your document, identify the supplier where it's being set up, it would identify the document type, and it would also pick up if there was a purchase order number on that particular invoice. So we would just go through, check all those details are correct, and then we would convert those to invoices for processing. So that would be how we would handle the inbox, which is done continuously throughout the day, as and when supplier invoices come in. Where we are working on sites, the guys will get in touch with the office and ask us to raise purchase orders for the materials. So we no longer attend any job on any site under any circumstances without a official purchase order being raised. So it would depend on the timescales, because we do offer a reactive service as well. If it was more of a reactive job, we would raise a purchase order through the system and give this to the guys in the field, where they can then take that to the supplier and then order the materials under that order, and then they would send us a copy of their collection note, so we know exactly what was collected under that purchase order, and then we can update it in the office. Alternatively, if we've got a bit more time, which is not always the case, but if we do have enough time to be proactive, we can request quotations from suppliers for all the materials, and then we would feed those into the inbox and convert those directly to purchase orders. And as we do that, it's assigning the costs, the materials to the particular job, and then it automatically obviously just emails the supplier a copy of our purchase order, so everybody knows what we're expecting, what materials, where they're going, and when they're coming. So that would be how we would handle the inbox. We often review the project overview, so we're looking at the actual status of the projects that you've got there, so you can dig into the details. So if Select Webinar was an example there, we would go into it and we'd have a look at the budget that we'd set, where the costs, the current spend, actual spend and predicted spend, which would be in the total costs bit where we're tracking, and then we can drill down and use that to drive how we then continue to manage that project in the system. The other thing that we do is the little delivery van, one of my favourite features, the delivery section. So we have got apps for the guys in the field to do this themselves, but as we are still reasonably new at using this software, we are doing it in a staged rollout to make sure it's implemented correctly from the bottom up. But we often go in and update the status of the delivery. So where we've raised a purchase order and we've asked for it to be tracked, we would then, when our guys have received delivery on site or the materials have come to the office here, we would go into the delivery function and update that system there, and we would say we've got 5 of these, 4 of these, and 2 of those, these are missing. And at that point, if they were supposed to be in the order or they're on the note or anything like that, we then use that as a proactive chase with the suppliers. Where are my materials? What's going on here? So
it's interesting that you say that, because when we were designing this, a lot of time it was quite simple for us. And when I say it was quite simple for us, like we'd worked our own companies and we done all that. So we knew the process, right? We knew that, you know, when you're making orders, you should be allocating those costs of the project, so you're not getting caught out with invoice costs as they're coming in. Basically, wait on the invoice to come in to determine where you are. Obviously, the risk of that is obvious, that if you don't get the invoice in the correct time form, you don't know where you stand on the project. So obviously put the purchase order in front of that, and that protects the company against cost overruns. Essentially, what POs are like I can tell a brief story on this. Like we globally researched the hell out of this before we designed anything. And the foundation to any good cost control system belongs at the PO. It really belongs to the PO. So putting the PO in place gives the company control over everything that's happening from a cost perspective, meaning that I'm not reliant on any supplier sending me an invoice in time. And it also, as you described then, sets up the next step, right? So if you take construction off the table for a second and think about accounts payable best practice. Accounts payable best practice says that every invoice that comes in should have proof of order and proof of delivery. In construction, and especially in electrical, with a high volume of items and parts that were getting delivered, the delivery aspect can be difficult, and therefore we can sometimes be tracking off 2 because we just can't get that information back from site. So we had to figure out a way to get that information back from site via the mobile app. And I think what you're saying there is that your process is, okay, quotes can go to suppliers. We can take them in, we then create a purchase order. So for anyone that doesn't understand, what we do is we just use very simple color codes in. So as someone makes an order from the company, what we do is we just allocate that to the project using a different color code here. So anything in green would represent a cost that's been committed in the company, has been approved by the company, and then if we're connected to Xero or Sage or QuickBooks, it's been sunk across in there. So it's very clear to see what's actually been spent on the project. Then from the committed cost perspective, what we do is we just allocate them as an amber cost. And the amber cost means that we know now and have control over what costs have been committed on the project that we don't have invoices for just yet. So that allows us then to set up a next step, which is connect every delivery to these as well. So deliveries can land in via the mobile app into that dedicated delivery section. And they can also land in then underneath the document section, underneath the purchase orders. We can just click on any little van here and it'll tell us basically what's been delivered against that. So if you've got 1 or 13, and it'll tell us, and that basically allows us then to clearly understand when an invoice lands in what's being delivered on that invoice, which is great. Is there any like specific tools or reports even that you find particularly useful?
All of it, Ciaran. All of it. We use the project costings, the phase costing log report. We use that to have a look at kind of where we're at. Yeah, there. So you can have a look at your reporting, the separate phases, to understand where you are versus your proposed budget versus your actual spend. We use that and share that around the business, particularly before we close a project down. So we circulate that, and this is kind of where we're at. After we've captured all our operational overheads, are we comfortable that we have everything covered, catered, and this is where we're at? And we use that as the basis for pricing future works. So that is very, very handy. In terms of the elements, I mean, we use this day in, day out now. Would be here all day if I told you about everything that we use and we really love about it. So yeah.
Excellent. Like, in terms of that, so it sounds like you're getting good use across, I mean, the whole platform, which is great, which doesn't happen overnight. I think we chatted previously, and I think you were right to say at the very outset, it is better staging this, right? You don't want to completely, upend the whole company. It is better to look at it in terms of a stage process. Like, so like, now that you've sort of gone through that process, like how has LiveCosts impacted, I suppose, the overall project efficiency?
I can't really articulate it, Ciaran, because for us it's been a complete game changer. So we were very admin heavy in the office, trying to track costs, trying to tie everything back, looking around for multiple invoices that we've got, that was it for that job, was it for that job, have we returned this, have we not? The admin, it was very admin heavy and very behind the times, behind the, 2-3 weeks down the line, are we somewhere near? And that obviously does cause problems. But from a productivity perspective, it's enabled us to deliver multiple projects, so more projects running concurrently, whilst we have a better control and visibility of our spend at that time. Whereas, when you've got reactive jobs and projects, you need to know exactly where you are at any given point, which we can do that now and on a much bigger scale than what we could before. So we used sort of Excel spreadsheets, and I love a good Excel spreadsheet, but you cannot deliver and deal with the number of projects, reactive calls, and supplier invoices, subcontractor invoices. It is virtually impossible to track effectively. So it's reduced heavily admin time, but not only has it reduced the admin time, it's given us better real-time actuals. I know at any given point where our red flags are, or that project, we need to just watch that one, we need to move, electricians around in the field, or we need to cut costs on that one, or we've overspent here. So it's great.
Yeah,
game changer for us.
The spreadsheet one is always interesting to me, and I always think back to, we were running our own projects on spreadsheets until I came across a fact on a Forbes article of all places that told me that 88% of spreadsheets will contain errors. And I thought to myself, spreadsheets are a great business tool, brilliant business tool, and we all use them, and I use them here on a daily basis. But is it the right business tool to manage what's critical to the business, which is the lifeblood, which is the cash? And then I decided, nah, I don't think, if 88% of them factually have errors in them, I don't think that's the best place to manage the cash of the business. So that was my shift away from we should be using something a bit more efficient. Like, is there any case studies then? Like, so if it's improving efficiencies, like, do you have any sort of case studies then that people would be interested in, of how it's actually, at the end of the day, this is all about saving time, saving money? Do you have any examples of where you save your time or money?
Yeah, we've got quite a lot. So I think when we started with the software, we kind of went live with it at the beginning of April. It was new to us. Obviously, it took a bit of time to get used to, understand how all the pieces of the jigsaw fit together, I suppose, for want of a better phrase. But it very, very quickly, by the end of week 1, became apparent that whilst we had tried previously very, very hard to be on top of invoicing, costs, scope change, etc., which I'm sure are quite common challenges for everybody on this call today. It became apparent after week 1 that things had been slipping through the net from our perspective. So already we've calculated, and I did it in preparation for this call, but already we have proactively chased credit notes for materials that didn't come or that were returned, that we hadn't been given a credit note for, over £4,000. And we started with this at the 1st of April, and let's be honest, the 1st of April we were probably doing our best, but not fully up to speed with it. So for us, this has been a game changer. Whilst it's difficult to quantify values and figures prior to us doing that, because what you don't know, you don't know. There are actuals. That's what we're looking at from the 1st of April. From that perspective,
a lot of people are can be cautious about, you know, technology, and, you know, naturally as an industry, we're not very tech friendly, are we? Let's be honest. And the facts would say that. I think construction as a whole is like only second to agriculture in terms of the least digitized industry of all. So like, how in a day-to-day sort of, you guys had to make, yourself and Robert had to make a decision that, you know, we're going to put some new technology into place. Did you have to consider user experience? Like, you know, how user friendly did you find it, and how did that impact, I suppose, you making a decision about how other people in the company were going to buy into this?
I think from our perspective, we all like user friendly. We don't want to overcomplicate the wheel when we're already trying to do more work than the hours that we've got in the day. I think one of the things that I particularly liked about LiveCosts, it's very architecturally pleasing. So it's really it's very visual, so you can see exactly where you're at. It's not difficult to navigate from a user perspective. One of the other key points for us when we were looking for software, we use Xero to do our accounting package, and I'd been looking at options and what was available. And one of the big pluses for me about LiveCosts, it does not duplicate what Xero does. So some of the other software we'd been looking at, it allowed you to do invoicing, it allowed you to do all these other things, but I didn't want it to do that. It was overcomplicating it. I wanted to keep the two systems separate, apart from the costing integration and the invoicing element. I didn't want it to do, you know, everything that my Xero package did. So when we came across LiveCosts that looked to be really user friendly, and it was more than what we were looking for. So we weren't actually looking necessarily for the whole catalogue piece. We didn't really know we needed that until we took out the package. It kind of offered more than what we were initially looking for.
What about the feedback side of things? So obviously you would have went through the process with our onboarding team. Like, can you talk through that, like, as in, I suppose, engagement from the team, and the team, I suppose, like, can you just walk through what that process looked like for you in terms of when you made the decision, okay, we're going to go with this, and in terms of, right, how do we get from, I think I like this product, I think this is something that we could use, into how it's sort of working today, and how did the team sort of walk you through that?
So obviously once we'd decided to, I suppose, to take up the package and go with it, we were then invited to like an initial video call just to talk through like what the next steps were, how would we land this, how would we implement it, and how would we integrate it with our existing system. Because obviously one of the key points is, whilst you've got a piece of software, it does have to talk to your accounting package. So we needed to understand how those two things would work together. I had several video calls and training sessions on a weekly basis with Niall and Amy, and they were great in terms of sort of hand-holding, I suppose, and helping with any queries or questions that we've got. Because obviously when you are landing something new in the business, it's really important that you understand the nuts and bolts, I suppose, and don't just start running with something that then you can't roll out or upscale. So yeah, it was great to have those on hand, really, to help, and Patrick as well. So one of the things that we really love here is the ability to ask a question in the online chat box, and you generally get Patrick coming back really quickly with any sort of help or guidance and support. And then there's always somebody available to jump on the video call if you've got an extra queries that you can't sort of work out yourself. It's been great, really great.
Yep. There's a question coming in from Paul Robinson here, just asking, like, how many contracts managers. I'm not sure whether this is exactly how you guys are working LiveCosts, so I can chip in with my thoughts on this as well. Like how many contracts managers controlling projects are using LiveCosts. So I think is it a case where you guys would put like an app on each project and give someone control of the app, whether that's either, you know, sometimes that can be project manager or can be contracts manager in this case. Is that how you guys generally manage that?
So from our perspective and our structure, there are 4 of us within the office structure that use this day in, day out. So we have access at any point to view the projects or you know, deal with the invoices of anything like that. So we manage our business structure. We manage this from an office perspective, and we use that.
Yeah, I mean, from a general point of view as well, like from other electrical contractors that we work with and other contractors as a whole, generally speaking, they'll give out, whether it's a contracts manager or a projects manager, they'll give out access, and that is so the point of access, Paul, can be controlled by what we call this super admin team. So let's say in Lizzy's example, whatever control you want to give to a certain user, even if you don't want them to see revenue, for example, or you don't want them to see material costs, you don't want them to be able to do a PO, all that type of stuff is completely customizable. So generally speaking, like if it's a contracts manager in each project, yeah, we just give access to a contracts manager on every project, and then you control what you want that contracts manager to be able to see and do as well. And then obviously that can be mobile based, or if they're working on the laptop, it can be cloud based as well. With that, then I suppose, well, like it sounds like you probably would recommend LiveCosts, right? From what I'm hearing, that is like, so like what advice would you give, I suppose, to anyone that's considering, I suppose, going on a technology, maybe even as a whole, thinking about implementing any new system into the business, like from having gone through the process yourself?
So specifically relating to this one, so bite-sized chunks would be my advice with this, because there is so much functionality available within this system that you can get very excited and start trying to do too much in one go. And I think if you're looking or considering moving to something like this, it needs to be done in a very, very controlled manner, because it's not just a system implementation and rollout across both your office and, you know, potentially your field. It's fundamentally a mindset change, or it certainly was for us at initial. So from a field perspective, like I alluded to before, I felt like we had a bit of a gap between the field and the office. So whilst the electricians in the field are wanting to get the jobs over the line for the client, you know, if they've got something missing or materials missing, they are obviously wanting to get the job delivered, so going out and sourcing additional materials, but then there's a delay, and that's not sort of wasn't being efficiently and effectively passed back to the office. So by implementing something like this, but by doing it in bite-sized chunks, so we started by encouraging the electricians in the field to start requesting purchase orders for every single job. Just don't, you know, go and get materials without having a purchase order. That, you know, as a starting point, and then we have bit by bit added sort of everything else into it. So we've built the catalogue up as we're going along, and we're now tracking deliveries effectively. But I think just to be mindful that whilst this is fantastic, you can implement the whole package, but my advice would be just do it in stages, make sure everybody's comfortable with perhaps the first element. If you don't already raise purchase orders, start with purchase orders, then start building up into, you know, quotes from the suppliers. Let's email them in and convert them, just so that you've got a bit of control on it, because what you don't want is to be left with millions of open purchase orders that you've not tracked the delivery and you kind of don't know where you are. So sometimes it's just a case of slowly would be my advice for this particular software.
I agree. I mean, there's so much more there that we haven't covered. Like, so, for example, the dashboards, we sort of touched on POs, we touched on deliveries, we touched on integration, we sort of touched on, and a little bit around the invoice scan, but without actually talking about some of the reporting that goes with that. But there is a lot more to LiveCosts that we didn't cover, I suppose, today. In terms of any closing thoughts then, Lizzy? Like, is there anything else that you'd like to share about your experience so far?
I think from our perspective, it wasn't just some software that we were looking for. We were looking for a piece of software, but what you get with this, it's not just software, it's the bigger package. So it's the service that you get with this particular thing. I think we've had other things before, not specifically around cost management, but where you're kind of left on your own once you've bought a license or you're using it, and it's just so much bigger than a piece of, you know, software for tracking your costs. It's a complete package. There's always somebody there to help you, answer your calls, answer your questions. Yeah, so much more than just a software platform.
I appreciate your time, Lizzy. I really do. It's been great just to sort of get an understanding and how that transition has worked for yourself and Robert and the rest of the team there. So it's been great, and thanks very much for sharing that. For anyone that's on the call that wants to learn more, I've just got the website up here. We have, if you're coming through Select, you can talk to go through Select portal. You can talk to your Select rep, and there's obviously some benefits there for you coming through that route. If you do want to just go and explore a little bit more about LiveCosts, obviously you can come through the website. We've got a free trial available as well. Or if you just want to have a little quick look around the product, there's a product tour there as well. For the moment, Lizzy, again, thanks very much. Thanks for Select for contributing and putting this together. And we'll chat again with all you guys very, very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.